Well, good evening and welcome to our Facebook Live Q&A for Budget 2020. I'm Gavin McLaughlin, News Talk's Deputy Business Editor, and I'm joined by Peter Vale, who is a tax partner at Grant Thornton. Now, you've been sending in your questions for us all afternoon, and Peter's going to answer them for us now. So, Peter, first question is this budget a green one? What does it mean from an environmental point of view?
I think, Gavin, there are probably a few themes in this budget, and green is definitely one of them. A number of carbon tax changes and carbon tax increases, the general theme being whatever is raised through these additional taxes will be pumped back into green initiatives. So there was, and it'll be well flagged in advance, there is an increase in carbon tax, and what does that really mean? Well, that means an increase in the cost of fuel. So from midnight tonight, there will be an increase of 2 cents a litre, both petrol and diesel. So fill up your tanks before midnight tonight. From that point, cost will go up by the 2 cent. A number of other initiatives too, some relieving ones. So the home heating oil, for example, that increase, which because of the carbon tax increase, there'll also be an increase in things like home heating oil, that will be deferred until May next year. So some relief for people over the winter months that you won't see that increase come through. Other initiatives would be around BIKs for electric vehicles. So that's been extended, so you don't have a benefit in kind if you're driving an electric vehicle up to a certain cap. So I think it's a €50,000 cap. But that relief has been extended. Again, that's a positive green initiative. There's VRT, so vehicle registration tax relief for hybrids. There is also BIK relief for some commercial vehicles, again where they're green. So again with the green initiatives. And an interesting development, again one that have been well flagged, is correlation between nitrogen oxide emissions and effectively a VRT. So when you buy a new car or import an older car, you now have this new charge based on effectively how pollutant your car is.
And so diesel cars will be the ones who face this most.
Worst hit, exactly. Now, if you're probably double what a petrol car equivalent would be. If it's a new car, they're generally much more efficient anyway and cleaner. So you could be talking about only between say 100 and €200, and it's a one-off charge on such a car. But if you're looking at an old car and a much older car, you could be talking about 5-6 times that. So for older cars that have much higher nitrogen oxide emissions, you're going to be talking about a much higher one-off hit.
Yeah, and then just in terms of the carbon tax, I suppose, he's flagged he's going to keep hiking it all the way out to 2030, so people need to get used to this.
Correct. I think it increased by €6 a tonne this year. Eventually it's going to get to €80. So over the next 10 years you can expect more and more increases, broadly in line with the sort of increase we saw today, maybe increasing a little bit over the years, and effectively trying to encourage people to be greener and go for those hybrid electric vehicles.
Next is the Help to Buy scheme then, because that's something that's obviously very important for first-time buyers, and there was a question mark over its future. Question from a listener is it capped?
It is capped. So it's capped at 500,000. It's very positive relief. It was very well received when it came out. There was some concern initially. Did it just mean that tax relief would be reflected in a higher price? And that by and large, doesn't seem to have been the case. And it certainly helped a lot of people fund their deposit. And what the relief is, it's maxed at 20,000, capped at 20,000, up till a house price of 500,000. So 20,000 can be a significant dent in your deposit on a house, and it's only for people who are taxpayers. So you do have to get that max relief of €20,000, you have to have paid €20,000 tax over the previous 4 years. So for a lot of taxpayers, they will have done that. And effectively then you can use that, it's like a tax rebate of that 20,000, and you can put it towards your deposit. Important to note, it's just for new builds or for new houses. So either one that you're self-building or you're buying new. So just for new houses. Okay. But a very attractive relief. A lot of lobbying to have it continued. There've been over 15,000 people who have received it to date, so well received.
Next question then is there anything in the budget for rural Ireland or Gaeltacht areas?
Yeah, there is, and it's quite a significant theme of the Minister's speech in terms of investment in both rural Ireland, agriculture, farming initiatives, some tax reliefs, farm restructure reliefs extended, and a lot of investment generally in agri developments, agri initiatives, and indeed into the Gaeltacht areas, specifically into the islands. So a lot talked about, some detail in it and others that to be fleshed out, but significant amount invested both in the rural and also in the rural transport. That was another theme of the Minister's speech. So yeah, there is definitely a focus on rural. There's a specific focus even thinking about on the Midlands, where there's an amount earmarked for Midlands development, where you're going to have certain, again, with sort of going back to the green initiative, some of the peat refineries closed. So acknowledge that is going to cause a difficulty for that area, so pumping money into that specific region, which again is a positive and makes sense.
Yeah. Now, housing, of course, has been one of the major issues over the last couple of years. What's in the budget for our housing market?
Yeah, again, talked about green, a bit of theme of the budget. Housing is also a theme of the budget, and we knew that in advance. So a significant amount of money, again, earmarked for various housing initiatives. That includes social housing, it includes homeless services as well, so not just about housing, but homeless services. It includes things like the Help to Buy, extending that, the Living City initiative, and also for tenants as well, and investment in the PRTB, the tenancy board. So there's a whole plethora of initiatives aimed at improving the housing stock. We have seen some improvements in terms of the amount of stock that's come onto the market. Obviously there's a lot more that needs to be done. That's acknowledged by the Minister, and hence we've seen quite a bit of investment in that.
Okay. This person here says, I'm a teacher, and is there anything in the budget for me?
Specifically for that person, probably not a lot, unfortunately. This is one of the few budgets where nobody's got that £5 a week, beyond a very limited amount of welfare recipients. And for the taxpayers, there's nothing. So there'll be no changes to tax bands, tax credits, or very, very little. So the vast majority of taxpayers will be neutral on this. So it's not going to generate any additional tax savings. So for that individual, they probably think the answer is no. That said, there is a lot of investment in education, again, in terms of teaching posts and special needs and special need assistance. But I suspect that question is more about, well, will my take-home pay be more from 1 January next year? And it most likely won't be.
Back then to the issue of housing.
Yeah.
Has there been any changes to stamp duty on new builds?
Yeah, there has been. And again, like a lot of things well flagged. Well, sorry, there has been a change to stamp duty, not actually for new builds. What was well flagged was a change for commercial property. So the stamp duty rate on commercial property has gone up from 6% to 7.5%.
And he's hit this really hard over the last few years.
Has.
This is one of the
Correct.
number of hikes he's put in.
Correct. I mean, the rate was 2% very recently, so he's brought it up now to 7.5% in a very short space of time, only at commercial. So he hasn't aimed it at residential at all. So that's positive for home buyers. There was a view or a fear that he might extend that higher commercial rate to residential, to bigger unit residential, so the built to rent, large scale developments. And a lot of institutional investors would invest in it. There was a concern, maybe student accommodation, would he extend that 6% rate or even this higher 7.5% rate to those sort of schemes? He hasn't.
Very hard for him to do that.
I think it would be. It wouldn't have made sense. So definitively there's a focus on keeping the residential rates lower because of that housing theme, and he has just, on the commercial side, increased it. And again, I think it'll raise 150 million. So it's an easy one. Again, nobody gets out in the streets to argue about an increase in commercial stamp duty.
Certainly not. What does this budget mean for pensioners?
For pensioners, not an awful lot in terms of pure increases again in welfare. There is, for pensioners living alone, there will be, it's a 5-year increase. Some other relief, and again, it depends on facts and circumstances in terms of some increases or decreases in terms of the thresholds for prescriptions, some relief there, some relief in terms of fuel allowance, €2 a week. So some limited initiatives there that will apply. Again, some of it's means tested, some of it isn't. I think the average pensioner will probably look at this and say, no, there wasn't really an awful lot in it for me.
What about corporation tax then? Is there any changes to corporation tax?
Every budget, Gavin, that I can remember, there is a statement on our commitment to the 12.5% rate. And it was no different this time. And I think that's, and people say, people laugh at it, but it's important because there's a lot of talk about our corporate tax regime, and it is important that at every opportunity the Minister reiterates his commitment to that 12.5% rate. So nothing in terms of that rate, didn't expect anything, commitment, and in fairness, every political party is pretty much committed to that 12.5% rate. A bit in there for businesses in general, for business taxes, so linked to corporate tax, are things like R&D tax credits, or research and development tax credits. There was quite a bit of lobbying beforehand to try and improve that regime, particularly for smaller businesses. That's one of the most positive aspects of the budget, is for smaller businesses, the research and development tax credit has gone up from 25% to 30%. That's a massive difference for a small business. If you're spending €100,000 on salaries, you get 30,000 of that back now from the Exchequer. Yeah. Furthermore, he has also said in a speech that he's going to look at better ways of getting that money back to businesses. So you used to have to wait 3 years. Now I suspect you can get it almost on a real-time basis. We'll see the detail. So some relief there for small businesses. Some other reliefs that are positive, again for businesses, not specifically around corporate tax. but around things like the Keep scheme, which is to try and incentivise people to own shares. And
that's been kind of roundly panned. Very few businesses have been taking it up.
Correct. We're talking about 10. And that's
unbelievable. You know?
It's ridiculously low. And if you look at comparisons with other EU countries, you know, it's derisory. So it's been acknowledged that, well, it mustn't be working. I mean, the evidence is indeed, and people just aren't accessing it. It's too restrictive, and you just can't get into it. So a well-intentioned relief, and there've been a few like that, but the detail meant it didn't work for business. So he has committed to making changes in that, and there were issues around holding companies. It was practically impossible to access it, but there was any holding company in the structure. So that has been changed, and will be changed according to the Minister in his speech. Will there be other aspects of it changed? We probably hope so as well. Similar to the EIIS, which is the OBES, which is a very efficient way for businesses to raise capital outside of bank finance, with a tax relief for investors when they put that money in. You got an element of that relief up front, but you had to wait 4 years to get the last chunk. So now it's all in year one. So that's 40% relief in year one. So that's a very positive development. He's increased how much people can put into businesses and get that relief. So he's done some of the things that were asked of him, not everything. He hasn't, for example, improved the entrepreneurs relief. And again, there would have been a lot of coverage about entrepreneurs relief in advance of the budget. A lot of hope that it would have improved our regime or brought us in line with the UK.
Yeah.
The moment we're heavily out of sync with the UK, and you've got to imagine that post-Brexit, the gloves are off. The UK are going to market themselves aggressively as a quasi tax haven. You could say that they'd be entitled to, and they've already got a low rate. It's trending down towards our rate. It'll be at 17%. It may go lower. So, in the current climate, it's incumbent upon Ireland to do everything that we can for entrepreneurs and encourage people to stay in business in Ireland. So there was a hope that the entrepreneur relief, which is a lower capital gains tax rate for business owners, a 10% rate on the first 10 million of profits. That's what the UK has. We have it only on the first million of profits. So there's a big delta there between the two. Never more important, timing-wise, to align our regime with the UK's, at least do that, and he hasn't. So that was one of the big disappointments. Now, he has said, I'm looking at it. He hasn't ruled it out. But we've heard that for the last 3 years, so a bit of disappointment in that.
That's when you hear that drum being beaten every year by entrepreneurs are saying,
Correct.
you know, the UK is a far more attractive place to start up a business if you're an entrepreneur.
And what I don't get is, I think, you know, the Minister probably, maybe you'd say legitimately, I mean, there's a cost to reducing a tax, you would imagine. And maybe there would be. It's hard, you can only speculate, but if you do speculate and you look back 20 years to when the basic CGT rate halved from 40% to 20% back in 98, the tax take doubles. So we have the rate, the tax take doubles. So it does have a behavioural impact. It does increase the amount of transactions, that people do things that they would want to do but they don't do because of a punitive tax. So I think it would have been cost neutral, and I think it's something he could have done. It may well happen, but again, it's been kicked down the road for another year at least.
Now, he made a move on inheritance tax. What's the changes there, I mean?
So he's increased it by 15,000. So the relief that a parent can, so that a child can inherit or take a gift from a parent. So that was in excess of 500,000. That amount that a child could take tax-free from a parent. Going back to 2007, it then got whittled down to, I think, 220,000 in the recession years, and it's gradually come up. There was a commitment to bring it back up to that north of 500,000 level where it was. And if you think about it, asset values have gone up, so you would imagine it should trend upwards as well. But it's gone up very, very gradually. And again, we saw a very small increase. I think it's up to about 340 odd now. So still a long way off where it was. It's still better, but you would have hoped that would have seen it move up a little bit quicker to the back towards the 500,000 level. Transport,
of course, is something that's very important for people's everyday lives. Do we see any changes on transport?
Yeah, there was again a commitment in terms of quite a large number in terms of investment in transport, various initiatives. Again, with the green theme, around BIKs for cars. So yeah, a bit done around transport. And again, it is a big theme of the Minister's speech, along with Brexit. We're talking about Brexit, along with Brexit and green and housing.
Who's likely to do well out of this budget?
I think we mentioned SMEs, and notwithstanding my comments around, say, the entrepreneur relief and what didn't happen, the main winners will probably be smaller businesses, and that's positive because that's who we thought needed the help with Brexit around the corner. But it's others as well, and it is a prudent budget. It is framed in light of an expected no deal, hard Brexit. If that doesn't come to materialise, somebody might say, well, actually, had we known that, maybe we would have done things differently. Maybe we would have benefited more people. As it is, not a lot, other than SMEs, people haven't done particularly well generally. There have been a number of tax raising measures, things like cigarettes go up and various other things going up, and little by way of tax relief. So go back to the teacher, no relief, it's as you were. Some very limited welfare increases. So other than SMEs, small businesses, not many winners, and no trendy, no intimation that, okay, I'm going to do something in the future, say at the high tax rates, the marginal tax rates. And that was, you go back a few budget speeches, there was talk, and it's come up in various policy documents, that there is an intention to bring our top tax rates, which are now 52 and 55%, down closer to the 50% rate. Because 55% is a massive disincentive to work. But we're still stuck with that.
Yeah, and I suppose he's trying to guard himself in the event of a no-deal Brexit, that you've still got this good revenue generator coming in into the exchequer. And that leads me on to the next question, which is, does Brexit feature in this budget?
Yeah. Well, Brexit features hugely, and I mean the opening part of the Minister's speech was all about Brexit, and he was quite clear this whole budget is framed in light of there being a hard Brexit. I'm being prudent, and everything that followed was around that premise. So yes, it does, and there's a big commitment, I think a 1.2 billion package that's exclusive of any EU funding around Brexit initiatives, and there's a little bit of detail, but flexibility is the name of the game. So he says, look, I'm going to pump money into wherever it's needed, and there are a number of things mentioned, but then he comes on to say, but look, we don't know where this is going to go, and we will react in effect. So wherever it's needed, we will then put the money into that space. So yeah, Brexit is a big theme. And like the unknown, Gavin, for the Minister is, where is he going to be this time next year? Yeah. Like, how much money is in the coffers? We know what's there now. We know tax revenues are up 8% on last year. But what he said in the speech was, I don't want to give away something now in light of like, why isn't anybody any better? Because he didn't want to give something away now that he'd have to claw back next year. And that is probably a legitimate concern, because things are trending upwards now. Corporate tax revenues, a lot of publicity on them, they're roaring ahead, much higher than expected. But we don't know what's coming down the tracks.
And he could even be on the opposition benches this time next year.
Exactly, I'm saying it.
Finally then, last question that's been submitted to us is, what does this budget mean for people trying to get on the property ladder?
Yeah, I suppose probably on that one, we talked about the Help to Buy scheme, and I think that's probably the main initiative that is still there. So if you're trying to get on the property ladder, the Help to Buy scheme has been availed of, I said, by 15,000 people. It is probably the single biggest relief for home buyers, for new homes, but it is a good relief. There are other social housing initiatives that will be of significant interest to certain people as well. So housing is a big theme in the budget. Again, he had a limited amount to spend, but he did allocate quite a significant chunk of it to housing. So I think generally people will see some favourable initiatives around the housing side, and then maybe disappointment around some of the income tax measures.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Peter. You're up bright and early with Vincent Wall tomorrow?
6:30 tomorrow morning. Yeah, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'll set the alarm clock. That's Peter Vale, a tax partner at Grant Thornton. So that's it from us. Thanks very much for sending in all your questions. Not too many goodies from Pascal Donoghue this year. I suppose he's had to play it safe with Brexit coming down the road. Let's hope they get a deal, because I think if there's a no deal, things could get pretty messy.